Hello, everyone, and welcome to this channel where we break down leadership principles and practices into actionable items for day-to-day leadership. I'm Dr. Lynn's Grant-Oyeye, a doctor of strategic leadership with interest in strategic foresight, organizational leadership, and the impact of culture on organizations and society. Today, we're going to be discussing a topic that is often not talked about as much as it should be, but it's very obvious, which is the silent member in a boardroom. That is discussing individuals or group of members who have challenges contributing to a topic or a motion, or generally are silent during deliberations. Although this talk is focused on the boardroom dynamics, it's applicable to a lot of formal or informal group settings where decision making is part of their processes. Why might a member or group of members stay silent? The fear of punishment, a desire to maintain the group consensus or harmony, and social pressures within the group to conform or act a certain way. These were some of the factors that were highlighted by Morrison in his article. So the objective of today's talk is that at the end of the day, you would recognize silence as a governance signal, understand the role of the chair in ensuring accountability, be able to diagnose some of the root causes in your own board, and also highlight some chair led interventions that might be put to action. What's the role of the chair generally on the board or any gathering? The chair sets the tone, controls the agenda, organizes or directs or supports the speaking norm, that who speaks and when, how, in terms of the topics that have been discussed. Also, the chair ensures psychological safety, which is very important in group members being able to articulate their thoughts effectively. What are the risks in ignoring silent directors on the board? There is a risk of groupthink where harmony is prioritized over the optimum outcome for the organization. There would be weakness in challenging management. There is exposure to failing in fiduciary duties and might ultimately lead to board failure, which has happened in the past in various situations where individuals are unable to challenge the direction of the group. In terms of watching out for the silent member or the general dynamics, watch out for dominant voices who speak over and above others. Watch out for the CEO overreach in terms of crossing the boundaries between being the director of operations versus the head of governance. And sometimes boards run into the challenge of not onboarding new members to understand the strength and the immense fiduciary duties that boards carry. A person can only be as good as the skills or the awareness or knowledge that they have. And then there is the issue of cultural intimidation, depending on the type of board, the structure of the board. It could be gender roles in terms of certain gender domineering over others. It could be in terms of expectations, certain members feeling they are more experienced, more qualified in terms of their career pathway. These can be a challenge on boards. The leadership principle that comes into play when dealing with boards is the idea that the board is there to serve and that the chair is there to serve the board and serve the organization as a whole, representing that fiduciary role to the highest extent. So the chair's role is to serve the board's effectiveness, ensure that dominating airtime does not occur because it impacts and undermines collective intelligence. The board chair should also know that quiet voices often carry the most unexpressed risk insight. What effective chairs might do in order to mitigate the situation is to actively invite dissent. Like, is there anyone here who is seeing something that we are not paying attention to? Is there anyone here who has a different point of view? That's an active invitation versus a generic, does anyone have something to say? And then rotating the questions that are asked and also giving time to pause for reflection. And when a challenge arises, to validate rather than squash that challenge, as in, well, good job. I think that's a great point. Let's look at that aspect. So in validating a challenge, board members are more likely to speak up rather than feel suppressed.